Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Supergirl. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This is actually a very fast-paced premiere because a lot of stuff, we went kind of 0 to 60. We went to Nia showing up and saving Brainy. And obviously him confessing everything about, like, I shouldn't have done what I did, but I did it all to protect you. I love you. But Nia's like, you're not getting off that easy. So she astral projects herself and kind of focusing. She was able to kind of unlock the door so she could get to Brainy. But Gemma shows back up, and luckily the rest of the squad shows up too. So it's a quick, like, let's quickly deal with her, because it's like, oh, we also got the anti-life equation, which I was like, I completely forgot about that. It's like, geez, all of this stuff happening at the same time with so much, because it's interesting because this is coming up there. Obviously, you know, what's going on with Superman and Lois, like the storyline about the other Luthor, about how his whole situation with Clark and the world he comes from is kind of parallels to, like, the Nightmare World and Injustice storyline that they're kind of doing at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League, spoilers, but now the anti-life equation. It's just like, it's interesting, like, how much I completely forgot about the anti-life equation thing going on. But lo and behold, they were able to kill or destroy Gemma. So it's like, oh, and with that, Leviathan's all gone. Like I said, I'd completely forgotten that, like, the rest had gotten sucked up in that. Like, oh yeah, that's where Lex's powers came from. I completely have forgotten about that. Which I love that whole thing of, like, yeah, that's where his powers come from. And I talked about it before of, like, yeah, it's like, you know, the whole conversation. Could we get this in a trailer? Which I also think is pretty dope. The trailer, and it seems like CW kind of done this more often than not. It seemed like they definitely do it with their superhero stuff. That the first episode is literally, the trailers for the seasons are literally the entire, like, everything from that trailer, to my recollection, is everything from this episode. So I have, like, no idea where things are going for. We'll get to that later. But I thought it was just so interesting. He's got these powers and everything, and he's celebrating because it's like, I have tuned these satellites that he's basically made it so, like, I'm like, how are you going to just get away with killing Supergirl? It's like, are you going to be, I'm a cool guy in the public, but secretly behind doors I'm going to kill Supergirl? It's like, oh, you basically made, you used obsidian platinum to basically brainwash people into loving you no matter what. It's like, it's sad, and it's that sad that, like, obviously when the multiverse when everything got rebooted, you still, after Crisis, you were loved by everyone. So you had to, you know, you always had to fit the narrative. And it's so interesting that at the end of the day, that's what you still want. You still want people to love you. That's so sad that, like, you have to brainwash people into loving you no matter what you do. And I love it. It's like, oh, and anyone else that's a non-believer, my satellites will wipe them out. It's like, okay, but his mom's like, I'm protected, right? It's like, don't worry, Mom, you're protected. She's like, and your sister. He's like, why? She killed me first. I love that genuine action. And then she's like, oh, my good boy. And then she, like, slaps him and it's like, now go save your sister. It's just, it's so interesting. I like that, you know, like, the perpetuant child that he is. Like, we see it from time to time, but it's just like, yeah, he might act so smart and stuff like that. But, you know, at his core, he is this, you know, this mad genius who still lets his obsession blind him, because you can, no matter how smart you are, when your ego gets the better of you, when your obsessions become everything, it blinds you from everything around you, and you get tunnel vision. That's always been his, like, biggest drawback. But obviously at the same time, it's like, oh, well, we know what he's up to after we saved Brainy, so we got to figure out, well, what our next move is going to be. So it's like, well, we got to destroy satellites. Yeah, but if we destroy one, there's going to be a fail-safe, so we kind of need Magan and John to, like, mind meld so they can destroy all the satellites at once, which comes with its own concerns for John, because he's got a lot on his mind. It's like, obviously his hatred for white Martians for such a long time, thought memories of his family, his wife, his daughters. The fact is that obviously, like, every thought of violence I ever had, it's like, for him, it's like him opening up to Magan like this. It's like her being able to basically see every facet of your mind, know you on that level. It's like, once you've gone that far, there's no going back. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle, essentially. So he has to, you know, he's scared about that. But for Alex has to remind him, like, all that you've been through in, like, one lifetime, and just how he's come out the other side of it obviously stronger, that, you know, actually opening up to someone like this can be a good thing at the end of the day, because it can bring him and M'gann closer, kind of looking at it like that. But that he doesn't have to worry about that type of stuff. So once again, I always love that, like, father-daughter relationship that Alex and John have. At the same time, we have Lena and Brainy working on a way to disrupt the effects, using Myriad as a means of disrupting the effect everyone has on being like, oh, super pro Lex and everything, which I like them being brought together too, because they're both people carrying the weight of their mistakes. Because obviously for Brainy, it's like he was so okay with working with Lex, because he's like, oh, like Leviathan needs to be stopped, but he was so close to Lex at the time. It's like he was so against, like, worrying about going too far that he becomes a supervillain, that he was so caught up in all that he wasn't seeing what Lex really had planned. Which even Lena's like, the fact is that she understands, like, you know, at the very end of the day, Brainy, everything you did, you were willing to sacrifice everything to protect your friend. She's like, now me on the other side, I was a hypocrite who assumed I knew everything and kind of what was best for everybody in the world. Which for her, she's like, honestly, for the first time in my life, I've kind of was able to kind of look through Lex's eyes, which obviously she's not saying is a good thing. So for her, it's like, I'm the one kind of coming out on top of, like, who kind of needs to make up for things. So it's like, well, what do we do? And it's like, well, we kind of, you know, we kind of leave this in the past, but we kind of remember it, and kind of just, we push forward, we do what we can to, you know, save the world and kind of make up for our mistakes, you know. So I think that's kind of interesting, that being kind of some of their story going forward, both of them kind of working towards redemption in many different regards, you know. So at the same time, you had Alex and Nia going after what they need to steal, the device they need to steal Lex's powers. And lo and behold, who's waiting for them? Otis. I'm assuming it's him as Metallo, but it never kicked in. And Lillian, but luckily they were able to kind of deal with that, got what they needed. Kara's making a sacrifice, you know. It's like, hey, like, I'm gonna give you, you know, to turn off the satellites, I'll give you what you want. And he's like, oh, what is, you know, it's like, oh, what's it? Hair? Don't, because that's low-hanging fruit. It's like, no, I'll give you, then you want more than anything, me. And he's like, oh, that's quite tempting. So he jumps at the bit the moment he has a chance, which Kara does leave a message. I'm so curious, because obviously she's thinking, like, things might not work out, but even Lena's like, don't do this. You know, you might get hurt. Like, you know, Lex isn't going to play for it. It's like, it's fine, because for her, as long as he's distracted, as long as it ends with him getting defeated, that's all that matters. If my sacrifice is what's needed to make it happen, then so be it. As long as he stopped, as long as the satellite stopped, that's all that, you know, matters. And obviously that just shows you the kind of person that Kara is, like, you know. And I think in that moment it just makes Lena go, like, why did I ever look at you differently? Like, you're still just the selfless person you've always been. Like, I just got it so caught up in my head that you aren't who you are, you know. And even talking to Alex about, like, yeah, her and Lena got a ways to go, but it's nice to work together. It's nice to see them as a team again, you know? And when the time came, though, Lex showing up and pseudo trying to kill, well, not trying to kill, but killing Kara. And I think it's so interesting at the end of the day, like, he's like, yeah, like, you up here thinking that, you know, you're narcissistic and believing that you know what's best for the people, which even Kara's calling it ironic. He's saying all this because it's like, oh, you have alien DNA in you right now, and you believe you know what's best for the world. She's like, reminds you of anyone else. And the irony isn't lost on him, because it kind of pissed him off, in fact. So he tried to kill her. Luckily, Lena, being who she is, thought of so much stuff in advance, so she had a protocol, you know, contingency plan that ended up saving Kara after fact. But I love that he's such a dick that he's just, like, dancing and just living it up and singing inside the Fortress of Solitude. I'm like, you're such a dick. I love that you're such an asshole. But obviously, everyone having worked together was able to, you know, end up freeing everyone from Lex's control, destroy the satellites, show up in time to back up Kara to kick Lex's ass. Granted, he still kind of got his powers, he's immortal and everything. Luckily, Alex was able to shoot her shot and drain his powers, but sadly, he ended up sending Kara to the Phantom Zone. Which, really quickly, I should bring up something I meant to bring this up earlier. It was this line where, like, for Kara, she wasn't worried about going up against Lex. She's like, yeah, being trapped in the Phantom Zone and, like, reliving your planet's destruction over for 10 years will kind of do that. And I was like, wait, what? I had to pause because I was like, she's never meant, and like, this is the first time. I don't think she's ever mentioned that in the other previous 5 seasons. I don't even think that was something that ever came up in maybe that's something that came up like fresh after she crashed on Earth. Obviously, we've gotten peeks into like her earlier years over the course of the show, but like when she first landed on Earth all those years ago, maybe there was something to that. But I'm like, that's so interesting. She's never brought that up before. Because like you reliving stuff, that sounds a little closer to. I mean, but I think she meant it probably literally in the sense of like, because I was thinking like she like, well, more mentally. Like I thought she meant it literally, like she was stuck reliving it over and over again. But it's like, no, she was in the Phantom Zone because time works differently there for 10 years, and she was stuck remembering over and over again, my planet's gone, my planet's gone. And you're kind of drowning in that nightmare, which I also think that is fascinating. That is something we haven't touched on at all. Like, I don't think the Phantom Zone's come up since she came out of it at the very beginning of the series. I don't think it has. Because I was trying to think, like, the most recent thing that's touched on the Phantom Zone was Krypton, because Seg and Brainiac were inside the Phantom Zone. If I remember correctly, he was kind of being driven insane because of all the stuff that he was kind of seeing in there. It was kind of like messing with his mind. Because obviously that was a very different depiction of like the Phantom Zone. It was kind of like an endless space. It seems like this one, based on what we've seen of it, because I was curious like what that was going to look like. Because like I said, initially I thought it was going to be a thing of like she's reliving her memory over and over again, not just like, oh, she's trapped in this place plus reliving her memories over and over. I thought the Phantom Zone was making her relive it over and over again. It's like, no, being trapped there, you know, your planet just got destroyed while you're there, and that's all you had to think about. It's like your family being gone over and over again for like 10 straight years. Once again, time working differently in there, but the way it looks in this, it's like, okay, so I think this, like I said, I think this is our first time seeing the Phantom Zone. Plus, it's kind of like Smallville's Phantom Zone, a little obviously differently designed, but kind of the similar vein of like it being this desolate wasteland. So I was like, okay, interesting. Once again, like the one in Krypton being very different, like I said, just being like this endless void in space that you're stuck in. Which I guess to a certain extent you can make the same argument, this being like this wasteland of a dimension that a lot of people have been stuck in prior to now. So sadly we find Kara, you know, being sucked into it. So it's like, you know, victory doesn't come without its price. Luckily Lena was able to kind of knock him out, because he was like, oh yeah, if you arrest me, I'm going to tell the entire world Supergirl's identity. As Kara Danvers is like, oh, Mama Danvers going to be in trouble, or your love Kelly would be in trouble. And Lena punches him, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Alex, would you have wanted to go? She's like, no, family first. So I was wondering how they were going to get around that, but later on, Lena used Myriad. At first, I was wondering if she was going to use it to, like, make them pro-Supergirl. I think that'd be the biggest irony of all. I mean, granted, she did it to wipe away their memory of Kara, like everyone that was associated knowing Kara's real identity as Supergirl, so she's no longer in danger on that front. Granted, who knows what else she did? She could have weaseled in some more warped their minds to be more. I mean, it might be like there's probably not enough to warp their minds to be pro Supergirl. It would be cool if you could have been able to do that. Granted, it's going to be interesting to see like under what new circumstances. Obviously, him being locked up now, and you know Lillian and everything. Like, will that change things going forward? Like, what their circumstances are going to be like going forward? Like, is it just going to be like, oh, I'm going to try and find a way out of this, or I'm assuming we're done with Lex for now. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we'll get more of him as the season progresses. But kind of in the aftermath of everything, you know, we kind of see everything kind of settle down. Obviously, Nia and Brainy, whereas a situation of he's obviously apologetic about everything that went wrong, and obviously it's like, you told me you love me, and he is just like, yeah, you know. And for her, it's like, I don't need, you know, even if you want to keep something because you think you need to protect me, but it's like, I'm a strong woman, I don't need to be protected. And he's like, I know. So it's like a thing of like, no more secrets between us. Like, if you want to try and fix things between us, because obviously she's like, I'm this, I'm that, and I love you too. So I was kind of happy. I was like, yeah, I'm glad to see you two together. So hopefully things kind of work on that. I'm curious to see, like, the fact is they bring that up too. I'm like, what other? I mean, it might be some like future secrets that might come up, that might, like, stuff about the future where it's like, yeah, because of that, like, there might be some stuff on that front where he's like, do you keep secrets from her? It's like, well, I can't keep any more secrets from her, so stuff that I probably shouldn't tell her about the future might come up where I need to tell you about, because he already kind of knew who Nia was before. It's like, wait, oh, you're Nia, you become Dreamer. Like, he already knew about her superhero future because he's from the future, which makes you wonder, are we going to have a kind of a similar, are we going to have a Nate situation? Once again, if Nate literally always falling in love with women out of time. First it being Amaya, and then there was the whole him and Zari thing, so he just constantly falls in love with women out of time, and it just obviously it ends very, like, complicated. Obviously the Amaya situation was complicated, the Zari situation super complicated as well, so that becomes the thing of, like, are we going to have a similar thing where it's like he's someone from the future? Will he eventually have to return to the future, and, like, what does that mean for him and Nia? That's something I don't think I've even thought about that until just now. I'm like, man, how could I not think of that? And also, we don't know what, like, the whole Magan and John thing of, like, where that goes going forward, because they didn't have too many more moments afterwards in this episode, so that's going to be, another thing to kind of be to consider. I forgot to talk about it in the Flash, because seeing John reminded me that, like, Cecile in the chair, in the Thinker's chair, that, like, I think it was Cisco that was like, oh yeah, take that, Martian Manhunter, or something like that. I completely forgot about that from the Flash, but like I said, seeing John made me think of that again. But I also like that he kind of gave Alex her code name being Sentinel. Basically, it's like, you remind me of my essentially a colleague I had on Mars, Noah Coate, basically being someone that would, when they lock up prisoners, that this colleague would stay on guard to make sure there'd be no ambushes and stuff like that. Courageous, strong, and committed, very much like her. And it's like, and it's like, I want you to kind of represent that symbol, and he adds it to, like, the Justice League lineup, and you're like, look at all those beautiful insignias, those symbols. It's like, it looks so good and so beautiful together. It's like, it makes you go, damn, like, because I'm someone who's watched, I like to rewatch some of, like, the crossover episodes and stuff like that, but I'm like, I don't think I've rewatched all of Crisis. I've watched 1, 2, and 3 multiple times. I haven't watched 4 and 5 multiple. I kind of get that itch of, like, I should take some time to go back and rewatch Crisis, because it's so damn good. Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm just any of the crossovers in general, but still, I'm like, dude, it's like, yeah, the Justice League is in this continuity, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I don't know, it gets you, just seeing all those symbols, like, lined up like that, just gets you super giddy. You're like, yeah. Which also makes you think about it. It's like, right, that's something that Ryan doesn't know about. Being Batwoman kind of makes you part of the Justice League. It's like, wait, what? Because she hasn't had interaction with other superheroes yet. Dude, I cannot wait when she does. I wait until she does. I hope we get more of that this season. I don't know if that's something that's really going to happen. I hope so, but we'll see. Because a lot of these shows, considering, like, Black Lightning and Supergirl being in their final seasons, like, it seems like it's going to be probably, like, a lot of just singular stuff. Because I don't even know if this is going to interact at all with Superman and Lois. Once again, supposed to all be on the same Earth, but even other people kind of being like, is this still the same Earth? It seems like it's the same continuity, but not unless it's on a different Earth. I don't know. Once again, where we are continuity-wise, it hasn't been explained that the multiverse has expanded back out yet. Yes, it did at the end of Crisis, but that's supposed to be way later down the line, so it hasn't gotten to that point storyline-wise with all the other shows are all still dealing with just one Earth in the multiverse. Which I thought that was interesting that, like, obviously, he literally, like, at least based on Nia's dream, literally became the Anti-Monitor and was playing, for him it's like, I wasn't, because he was like, I'm going after, like, the other planets in his universe, because like, right, because at this point in time there are no other universes, so it's not like you're going to try and conquer the multiverse. It's just you're going to conquer the other planets. Is kind of his whole deal. Luckily, his ambitions ended up getting shot down. Once again, his obsession with Kryptonians ended up being his undoing, as it always is. But there is that side of things. Obviously, we also had the Andrea thing, which was kind of interesting. Obviously, like her dad basically turning against her and being like, "Yep, everything's my daughter's fault." Which she's like, "What? I've sacrificed and done so much for you," which is like even sadder because you did so much for him and in his name and for him pre-crisis that you're not even aware of all the stuff that you did pre-crisis for him. But obviously, she sacrificed a lot post-crisis, but still, she basically set her dad up to basically made it so that, he ended up buying all her shares of the business. So now she owns Catco, which is kind of interesting at the end. She's like, well, I kind of underestimate Catco. We could do so much. We can, what they can do for the news. Like all the stuff Kara was kind of fighting her a little bit about earlier in the last season. I think it's kind of ironic because it's, because your venture kind of failed and now you're kind of latching on to Catco being like, yeah, it can be this great thing. It's like you were already kind of told that before, but it came second nature. It was like, it was less important to you, but now that it's kind of all that you have. But I guess for her, it's like, this is her chance to kind of just say deuces to dad, kind of, you were kind of throwing me to the wolves. I've kind of thrown you back to the wolves. And now I'm going to take this business and I'm going to prosper and we're going to do so much great stuff with it. But Nia has to be like, yeah, Kara, she went with Miss Grant find a story, so and William's like, did you talk to Kara? It's like, yeah, but if Kara could have talked to you, she would have. So it's like, so obviously William's in the dark. But also it comes up, Lena bringing it up to Alex that she needs to tell Kelly about Kara simply because it's like you don't want to have that, because you keeping that secret keeps a wall up between, because there's always going to be a part of your life you can never fully give over to someone else, which I think is, interesting considering, she gave the advice to John about, opening up more to McGon. So it's, interesting for it to kind of work out in that vein now. But it's tell Kelly, I'm sure Kara would want you to, but also it's because obviously, that wall being built up, it can, lead to bad things. Lena knows firsthand. But more so than anything, Lena understands now, seeing the dangers of someone knowing your secret identity, now realizing I understand now why knowing why I was to not know Kara's secret identity. It was to protect me, to protect everyone, and obviously how dangerous a secret identity being revealed can be to everyone around them. So like I said, I think it's interesting because, like I said, I believe The Flash, this show ended, season 5 of this ended on episode 19. So I think this would have been episode 20. So I don't know if this would have officially been the season finale or not. Because this season is going to be 20 episodes. So I don't know if, just the way this episode was structured, just like the way things happen, boom, 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 that I'm like, this feels like kind of a season finale episode. Not less they reworked a lot of stuff going into it, knowing this is going to be the final season. So maybe they wrapped up stuff a lot quicker than they were planning to. Or maybe this isn't. Maybe this is just things would have ended here episode 20, but there's still 2 or 3 episodes of this season that would have been the, final leg of the season 5. Or maybe, like I said, maybe they reworked some stuff to make it, this would have been what, this is their wrap up in one episode. And I don't know. I'm so curious, once again, production wise, how much stuff is just and we're exactly picking up where the previous season left off, nothing's changed, and how much they did change between having to cut their previous season short to where we are now with the start of the new season. It makes you wonder about that stuff. Obviously, they've got to try and find out where Kara is because there's no locating specifically where she is. Apparently John's brother knows of one person, and that person's the one McGon's looking for, which I'm like, who could that be? Who could be referencing? I was like, that's interesting. Once again, all the trailer to this show did was showcase everything from this first episode. So like Flash, I'm like, I have no idea what to expect from the rest of this season. So I'm really interested. I mean, I think that's kind of the great thing. All the promotional materials for most of these shows are from the first 2-3 episodes at most. Like I said, with the exception of this, but everything else is kind of that same vein of I don't know what to expect going forward. Everything's kind of a surprise. So obviously, once again, sadly, this is the final season. Said it before, I'll say it again, time and time again. I'm bummed to see, to know that Supergirl is coming to an end, because I never want anything to end. I want everything to kind of continue forever and ever. I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. That's just me. I don't like endings. I appreciate them, but I just want things to kind of go. I just don't want to see this end. But that is still but that's kind of like, the oxymoron of the situation. I don't want it to end, but I'm also excited for it to end, so, because I'm so curious to see what final challenges awaits Kara, Team Supergirl, at the end of all this, like what their story is going to be, how everyone's story is going to play out, what villains are we going to see, where this journey will take us, yeah, that's kind of really all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.